Maybe. This is the online meeting of the February 17th Community Environmental Advisory Commission. I wanted to just provide some instructions on the use of the Teams meeting and kind of how that works out. We're going to be looking at this screen. If you hover your icon over the center of the screen, you'll be able to see, or you may have this at the top of your screen, the various different icons over there. I'm going to run through it as it looks like on mine. So you'll be able, and hopefully obviously most of you know how this all works. So moving from left to right on the toolbar, you'll see that there's an icon that looks like two people. This is the participant icon that shows who is on the online meeting. There are some, of course, that are shown just as the phone numbers, but we'll go through those as well too. Next is the conversation button. This really shows sort of the meeting chat feature, as it's also referred to. You can use this button to open the meeting panel chat, which will appear on the right-hand side of the screen. And if you want to be recognized by the chair, you can put in a comment here or question so that the chair can recognize you. You can also use the next icon over, which is the raise your hand icon, which is probably the preferred way, because then we can see exactly who that is on the photo icons. The next after the raise your hand icon is a series of three dots. Those are sort of the system features and backgrounds. Generally don't need to use that for this particular meeting. Then you have the video camera, where you'll find the toggle that turns on and off your video. When you are speaking, please turn on your camera. It's nice to have the interaction in there as well. And then next you'll see that you have the microphone icon, and this is a toggle switch that activates your mic during the meeting. You'll be able to turn this on and off throughout the meeting. We ask that if you aren't speaking, you mute your microphone to improve the overall audio quality of the meeting. And only the chair should leave their microphone on throughout the meeting. I'll leave mine on most of the time, but in presentations and things, it's nice to have that turned off. And then finally, you'll see that you have to the right of that mic is the share screen button. Not going to be using this. Our presenter, Liz, is going to be using this, and I'm going to be using it a little bit later on. But that is to share your screen if you want to be as part of the discussion, sharing something on your computer. And then the next button you'll see is the red icon button, which is how you stop your participation in the meeting. Please do not push this unless you are going to be leaving the meeting. Are there any questions? Okay, great. Before we start the meeting, we want to just quickly review a couple other instructions in regards to how the city clerk and open meeting laws. So under the state's open meeting law, all votes during the online meeting must be taken by roll call, and this includes the election roll call today. This will require each member to activate the microphone and give their vote verbally, and then turn the microphone back off. So I think everyone has a good understanding of how that's going to work. So as a reminder, if you want to be wish to be to speak, please raise your hand, or you can put a comment in the chat box, but raise your hand would be great, and then the chair can call on you. If anyone would like to make a motion, that's something we've done verbally as well too, but if it's possible to type it out, we can then have record that very accurately. And then if there's anything that folks have a technical issue on, please email me. In the Outlook invite is my email address, and I can help you take care of things on this side. So if there aren't any questions, then we can get started. So
can I just interrupt for a quick second, Kim?
Mm-hmm.
Just as a heads up, if you are not muted, I do have the power to mute people. So if you at some point find yourself muted, just as a heads up, I'll make sure to try to call on you so that you can get yourself back off of mute. If you are calling in by phone, you may need to press *6 in order to unmute yourself. So I just wanted to give that. Ooh. Sorry. Barbara, just as a heads up, you're on the meeting twice and it was having some feedback. So I did put you on mute. Okay. All right. I think we can continue then, Kim.
Okay. So good afternoon. My name is Kim Havey. I'm the Director of Sustainability, and so I'm going to be staffing this. Before we begin, I'd like to note that this meeting includes the remote participation of members as authorized under Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021 due to the declared local health pandemic, and I will now call the meeting to order. And actually, I'm sorry, I'm reading part of your script on that, Aaron. Sorry about that. So I will then turn that over to Aaron at this point.
Aaron, you're on mute.
Thank you for that. I just was wondering if we needed to do a test roll call before we start, or if we should just use the agenda and meeting minutes as like our test roll call.
Yeah, we can do a roll call of the members just to get the quorum official. So that's our initial roll call, and then we can do a roll call for the meeting and the minutes together.
Yep. Okay, perfect. I forgot that was part of my script. So good evening. I'm Erin Niehoff, and I'm the current chair of the Community Environmental Advisory Commission. Before we begin, just noting again that we have remote participation as authorized under Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021. I will call the meeting to order and ask him to call the roll so that we may verify the presence of a quorum.
Terrific, thank you. So just say present or here. Sabenta Ayansa. Max Dalton.
Here.
Indigo David Liu.
Here.
Mark Denon.
Here.
Tess Dornfeld.
Here.
Matthew Douglas May.
Here.
Sandy Fazeli.
Here.
Lauren Fleming. Divine Islam.
Here.
Leslie Jackson.
Here.
Anna Johnson.
Here.
Mamera Orgo. Toya Lopez.
Here.
Barbara Lundy. Barbara, I see you're on there. You may be on mute. I'm going to come back. Nick Minderman.
Here.
Jacqueline Zabetta.
Here.
Aaron Niehoff.
Here.
Barbara Lundy. She is on there. So let's just call her on here. I see her in attendance. So we have 15 members in attendance. So we have a quorum.
Great. All right. So
I'm sorry, maybe I should just back up one more thing. Was there anybody who is a SEAC commissioner who is on dialed in on their phone? Which may mean you would not appear.
I dialed in on my phone. I can't get into the meetings for some apparent reason. This is Leslie. So.
Okay. Oh, sorry about that, Leslie. Are okay. Okay. So yes, we have 15 members, and so we have a quorum.
great. Thanks, Kim. So the first item on our agenda is adoption of the agenda for today's meeting and also acceptance of the meeting minutes. Well, I would say for both January and December. Sorry, I didn't catch that, Kim, but we didn't approve the December minutes yet.
Oh, okay.
Is there anybody who has any changes that they want to make to either the minutes or to the agenda for today? And if not, is there anybody who wants to make a motion to proceed?
I'll make a motion to proceed.
Thanks, Victoria. Anybody want to second approval of the minutes and the agenda for today?
I'll second. This is Nick.
Thanks, Nick. All right, so roll call again, Kim.
All right, here we go. Sabetta Anyansa. Max Dalton.
Aye.
Indigo. David Luke.
Aye.
Mark Denon.
Here.
Tess Dornfeld.
Aye.
Matthew Douglas May.
Aye.
Sandy Fazeli.
I abstained because I was not at the last meeting.
Okay. Lauren Fleming, who I don't think is here. Divine Islam.
Here.
We're voting in favor of the meeting minutes. Okay. Leslie Jackson.
Aye.
Thank you. Anna Johnson.
Aye.
Mamira Orgo. Toya Lopez.
Aye.
Barbara Lundy.
Aye.
Nick Binderman.
Yes.
Jacqueline Zapeta.
Aye.
Aaron Niehoff.
Aye.
Okay, we have 14 ayes and 1 abstention. That carries. We've adopted the agenda and minutes.
Great. So as we get going here today, I just want to read through the land acknowledgement statement that we use. As we meet here today, we are reminded that Minneapolis is situated on the homelands of the Dakota people, an area that is steeped in rich Indigenous history and today is home to Indigenous people from more than 30 different nations. As a city, we have a responsibility to care for the land on which we live and work and all its natural surroundings. This stewardship is an integral part of our involvement in this commission, and we honor it as we begin our meeting. So I'm now going to open this space to discuss ways in which we can support Indigenous people in our community. And I see that someone has their hand raised.
Was trying to raise my hand. I'm not sure if that was me.
Okay.
Just one thing, if we could fix that second sentence, which is not actually a sentence in the land acknowledgement. That's just going to bug me every time.
Okay.
But to the point, I would encourage everyone individually to check out tinyurl.com/resistline3 for ways to get involved in the movement to stop the Line 3 pipeline replacement expansion in northern Minnesota that violates treaty rights and threatens wild rice, et cetera, et cetera. You're probably all familiar. I would also mention that the St. Paul City Council is considering a resolution of opposition to Line 3, which is potentially something that we could consider as well.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing.
I think with that in mind, I am just curious, Tess, do you have a little bit more information on like what St. Paul's statement looked like?
It's quite lengthy. I've seen the resolution. I think it's about 4 pages long. and I can try to share it. It's just in a Drive doc. I don't know any other details.
Okay. I am just curious then too, if that's something that people want to discuss further as a potential option for us as a body to consider.
I would be interested. Of course, I'd like to see what language they're using is, you know, and not just to make it a, I guess, an exercise in optics, but more something meaningful.
Yep. I'm seeing general head nods from the 6 people I can see. And looks like Mark would also be interested. Okay, so I think that that's something we should definitely discuss further, especially when we get into the additional topics to explore component of the agenda. Okay. Commissioner announcements. Does anybody know of anything in particular that is happening in the community that we should be aware of? Interesting events, anything like that?
Hello, Sean Gajewski with Friends of Lake Hiawatha. There is the vote tonight with the Park Board for the master plan for the Lake Hiawatha Golf Course master plan. And I sent you guys info to put in the chat there. Friends of Lake Hiawatha does support approving the new master plan developed by the Park Board.
Thanks.
And if I could add, for Upper Harbor Terminal, they've recently released a scoping document, which is part of the alternative urban area-wide review. And there are some environmental pieces to that. So perhaps it's something that we could raise in the business section as well.
Barbara, you have your hand raised? You're currently on mute, so you're going to need to unmute yourself first.
There's a move on foot to have the Corps of Engineers or whoever owns the Upper Falls Dam and Lock to sell it to private people. And there's a move to avoid that. And also, I just wonder if the Upper Falls would provide some hydroelectric power if developed. So just to tell you what's afoot.
Thanks. Kim, did you want to make any announcements about the Hennepin County Climate Action Plan or anything else?
Yeah, I did include a link into the Outlook invite, which had the agenda and things like that in. So there is we just sent out a sustainability newsletter, which includes a link to the Hennepin County's plan that they have, a climate action plan. Comments, I believe, are due March 3rd. I encourage folks to take a look at it. It has a pretty well laid out website and easy to understand. Lots of good things that are in there. So that's they're looking for public comment on that. And I think Sandy also mentioned that they're doing a scoping service for an environmental assessment at the Upper Harbor Terminal. So that's kind of a big action going on. On the south side, we've been waiting for an environmental assessment worksheet to be completed on the Hiawatha Public Works project, but we've been monitoring that on a weekly basis from the Environmental Quality Board at the state level and have not seen that. Our understanding is the work was completed by the consultant at the end of the year, and so it is no longer in the city's hands who originally let the contract out, but it has been submitted for EQB, and then it goes through a process there. So we'll be keeping folks informed on that because there will be an opportunity to comment, but that will show kind of the impacts, including the cumulative impacts as best they can be assessed on a project like that. So that should be coming out fairly soon. I actually was told it was going to be out in early February. So that's another thing that's out there. So that's all I have for right now.
Thanks for continuing to keep an eye on that for us, Kim.
And one other point on the Hennepin County Climate Action Plan. I will be having sample comments available on the RCC website on the Hennepin County page. We have just because it's easy for the county to look on just getting its own county operations to reduce carbon without looking to how to impact community, carbon reduction countywide. So we have a lot of ideas of how the city and counties, the county and cities can team up to reduce driving and many other things. So that's one of the areas we would love feedback, is to make sure the county is working on how to get toward countywide emissions reductions, not just the county operations.
Great. If you, Sean, wouldn't mind just sending me the web address that you're referencing, I can make sure to coordinate with Kim to make sure it's put into the follow-up SEAC email.
Yep, I put it in in the email that you guys right now. Yep.
Okay, great. Perfect. All right. So moving on to the next component, it is the election. And I do want to just point out that this is the first time as an advisory board that we are having an election online. In the past, when we have this in person, it is much more secretive. And so I do apologize for the fact that we have to do it through a roll call. There's nothing that I, as current chair, can do with that. So just apologies in advance for it. And I am going to turn things over to Kim for how we're going to proceed.
Great. Thank you, Erin. I sent out earlier today too, just an update, since we did have we had two folks who had, both Erin had indicated a preference to run for chair, and then Barbara at our last meeting indicated a preference to run for vice chair. We have since then, Anna Johnson has indicated an interest in running for vice chair as well too. So the way that we'll proceed is that we'll proceed initially with the chair selection, and then we'll proceed separately with the vice chair selection. And the process that we'll adhere to today for the elections would be that we'll have each of the candidates, or the candidate, make a statement for up to 3 minutes. We can then take 5 minutes for questions from commissioners. I'll share that time during the time that Erin is sort of standing for election. And then we'll go to the vice chair positions and follow that same situation with 3 minutes for statements of interest and experience. And then we'll have 5 minutes for question and answer. And then we will take a roll call vote. Are there any questions about that, or suggestions, or?
Sandy?
Yeah. Sandy.
Yeah, question. Will the candidates be online while we're voting, or will they be asked to log off?
I'm happy to step away or just be out of earshot if that would be helpful.
It's not something that I did check in with our city clerk on this. It's not something they put into any response that it was required. But maybe if folks feel more comfortable as far as like just, since everyone wants to develop a relationship, that sounds like a good suggestion. So Anna, if you're open to it, and Barbara, you're open to it, maybe that's just as well.
And I'm open for it too, even if my race isn't contested or anything. I still know that some people might want to abstain and stuff, so I'll also duck out.
Yeah, I think that sounds really good. Good suggestion. Thank you. So why don't we start?
I was just going to ask, any other suggestions as Kim moves forward? Okay, sorry about that, Kim.
No, it's all right. All right. So Aaron, you have up to 3 minutes to just tell us a little bit about yourself, why you're interested in the position, and some of your backgrounds and positions that you think might be of interest to the fellow SEAC commissioners.
Thanks, Kim. I'm Erin Niehoff. I reside in the Howe neighborhood of Minneapolis. If you can't tell, I have 2 dogs who are currently sleeping on the couch behind me. I will say that they have been my definite coworkers over this last year. I work for a nonprofit organization called the Environmental Initiative. Main mission there is to bring people together across difference to find solutions to environmental challenges. So a lot of my work on a day-to-day basis is facilitating meetings, working on processes, and then also making sure that the things that are decided in a group setting also get done. I have been in Minneapolis for 13 years now. I moved here originally from Connecticut and have basically stayed here ever since. My primary interest environmentally has been around water, and that's something that I did focus on when I went to the University of Minnesota. My focus at work is typically around projects that involve water, but I am really interested in environmental justice and an equity focus in how we can start changing the ways in which we do things as a society to try to make a difference. And I have been chair for the last couple of years, and I know I mentioned this back in January. It is something too where I'm hoping that over the course of this year, especially since it's a 2-year term, other people can decide for themselves if they want to run for chair next year, but it is something where I would like to hand it off to someone else since I have been chair for a number of years now. I also just don't want to toss the group off the deep end though either. Any questions for me?
This is Leslie. I got one. Since you've been doing this so long and you're ready for a change, why not, and you're expecting to be another 2 years here and you've been here 3 years, why not pass the baton on now since we have 2 people wanting to run for co-chair and then help them to be able to be stronger leaders and pass the baton? So why wait a whole nother term?
That's a great question, Leslie. And it is something where I am happy to serve as a mentor to someone else being chair. Just at our last meeting, nobody offered to run for chair, and I know that I offered myself. And it is something too where I'm hoping to work really closely with the vice chair if I were to be in the chair position to help with, having somebody else who's played a similar role to me over the last couple of years to make sure that the group continues to run relatively smoothly. We'll all have differences of opinion at different points in time, but yeah. So I don't know if it's something where Anna or Barbara would want to run for chair.
I'm personally interested in only the vice chair at this point, but thanks.
Thanks, Anna. Barbara, you're on mute. Oh,
I think it's an interesting question, and I would consider it, but I'm not. You seem to be interested in running for chair again, so I didn't volunteer for that.
Mm-hmm. Are there other particular questions? Tess.
Yeah, I'll take the opportunity to ask what you see as the opportunities for SEAC to do more community engagement, obviously challenging under the circumstances right now, but how can the commission move more toward bringing in the community's concerns and making sure that we are proactive in doing that and not waiting for things to come to us?
That is a great question. I'll say that SEAC went through quite a change in our enabling resolution in 2018. So that it impacted the 2019-2020 term that just completed. But in the past, SEAC as a body was much more technically focused, much more focused on business and kind of the technical aspects of environmental work. And so it wasn't, there were definitely some community concerns that came forward to SEAC, but SEAC didn't really do much around Northern Metals or any other concerns that had been brought forward to them at that time. Since then, and since 2019, we've been trying to do more to engage with community members. We did participate in open streets. We went to the community conferences. What's the conference thing that happens typically at the beginning of February?
Yeah, the neighborhood
then-
conference.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's escaping me right now too. But
and tried to participate in green team meetings and other meetings that we hear about to see how we can support different concerns for other people within the city who aren't necessarily on this body. It's something that I think we definitely need to continue to grow in. I don't think anything we're doing right now is close to perfect. But I feel like the direction that we're going in is much more community focused than it used to be. And I am really excited about continuing to grow that and would love suggestions and hearing what all of you have to say about that as we continue on. I know that we can't have that full long discussion right now.
any other questions?
Sandy, you just sent something through the chat about.
I did. I think it's more of like a high level policy issue, but the last SEAC sort of recognizing the difficulties in virtual meetings and particularly through the Teams platform, submitted a letter to the city clerk's office noting that, this is not conducive to community engagement. And so maybe we can also make changes at a higher level within the city. Sorry for taking your time.
No, that's okay. Are there any other questions?
Okay, well, seeing none, we will ask Erin to step away from her headphones and her screen, and we'll take a vote on chair. To vote in favor of Erin, please signify by saying yay or no if you are not in favor. Okay. I have not. Sabetta Ayansa, she has not been here. Max Dalton,
Yay.
Indigo David Liu,
Yay.
Mark Denon,
Yay.
Tess Stornfeld,
Yay.
Matthew Douglas May,
Yay.
Sandy Fazeli,
Yay.
Divine Islam,
Yay.
Leslie Jackson,
Yay.
Anna Johnson,
Yay.
Toya Lopez,
Yay.
Barbara Lundy,
Yay.
Nick Vinderman,
Yes.
Jacqueline Sveta.
Yay.
So that is 13 yeas and no nays. So that does carry. Now how to bring her on back. Well, why don't we start on in? I will text her back. Yeah. To come back. Oh, she's coming back. All right.
I enjoyed my puppy break.
Congratulations. You have been elected chair for the 2021 term. So it is a 1-year term. So there are elections each year.
So we'll be
So
going through this
now-
again in a year.
Yes. So now that you're officially chair, should I turn it back over to you, or do you want me to work through the co-chair one as well?
If you don't mind continuing
Sure.
to lead the co-chair one, I appreciate that. Thank you.
You bet. Okay, so I want to just make a call if there is anyone else from SEAC that would be interested in running for co-chair. You can nominate yourself if you at this time. Seeing none, we do have 2 commissioners that are running for vice chair, Anna Johnson and Barbara Lundy. So we will follow the same procedure in which we'll have up to 3 minutes for statement of interest, background, history, experience, why you want to be involved with as vice chair, and then we'll take 5 minutes for questions, and then we'll repeat that for each of the 2 candidates. So just from standpoint of alphabetical order, we'll start off with Anna Johnson.
Awesome. Thanks, Kim. Hey, everybody. My name's Anna Johnson. I use she, her, or they, them pronouns. I live in the central neighborhood of South Minneapolis. I'm a first-term SEAC member, so I'm new to the committee and all of this. So I'm excited to be here. A little bit about my background. I grew up just outside Chicago and did a couple things, college and afterwards, and then moved to Minneapolis 8 years ago. And just have felt very much at home here and have really loved it. So here to stay, and really appreciate a lot of things about the city, including all the lakes and the trees, and sort of like the tree to water ratio is always feels really good to me. I'm interested in being vice chair because I'm interested in kind of like helping to facilitate and craft an experience that reflects the priorities of SEAC members. I don't obviously don't claim to have all of the answers about what we want to be doing or what we should be doing, but interested in sort of the process and helping to facilitate what commissioners are interested in. And be part of the kind of brainstorming team to figure out how to make our time and our voices as impactful as possible, because obviously everyone joined this committee because they care deeply about the city and environmental issues. My professional background is I work for a nonprofit called Fresh Energy. So at my day-to-day, I'm advocating for and thinking about decarbonizing the economy. So I'd be excited I feel kind of plugged into climate and environment conversations in my work, and would be excited to bring those opportunities and potential experts and voices to the committee. And yeah, I think that covers it. I recognize that the cities have a big role to play in addressing climate change, and I think there's a lot of opportunities here to hold public officials accountable, engage with our neighborhoods and our neighbors and our communities, and to incorporate climate justice and environmental justice into city planning and city processes. So Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll email my chat's not working, so I'll email my phone number to Kim. So I'll step away and maybe Kim can text me when the vote is complete.
Okay, that sounds great. Why don't we go and hear from Barbara, and then we can take 5 minutes for question and answer, and folks either direct it or at an individual or to both folks at that time. So Barbara, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your interests and background and experience?
Well, I want to thank Erin for her interest and background in leading us so far. And I have some parallels with Anna. I grew up near Chicago and had been here about 7 years and been enjoying the city and the chance that it has to have a really great environment. I have a background in science, so I've joined on to the science is real saying that's been going around. And also I'm a professional electrical engineer, so I have probably a view of how things can really work. I do want to represent all the people in the city, and I want us to maintain and even improve our environment that we have. Recent issue is CPAP, I guess, is a chemical that some people have been using that could explain a lot of illnesses going on, I guess. I would enjoy working with Erin and with the rest of the commissioners to represent our views to the city government officials and the city staff. I think the city staff has been quite active in developing some of their answers and policies, and we could have a job in doing an oversight of that and responding to that. So I urge you all to vote for me. I'd appreciate your vote, and I am retired, so I have maybe more time to spend on these things. I'm currently working for H&R Block, doing taxes, but that's over April 15th, and do babysit my grandchildren too.
Terrific. Thank you, Barbara. So why don't we open it up for questions? If folks have individual questions or general questions for both candidates, raise your hand and I'll call on you.
Well, I can't raise my hand.
Oh,
This
I'm
is
sorry.
Leslie.
Thanks. Go ahead, Leslie.
I have I guess a question for both of them. It's the same. What part of Chicago did you live in? And what type of work did you do, basically environmental out there?
Oh, I grew up in Elmhurst, Illinois, actually 22 miles west of Chicago, and I attended Northwestern University just on the north border of Chicago. And I have a cousin who grew up in the south side of Chicago and now lives in Hyde Park. I spent some time in Des Moines, Iowa, and I was on the zoning board of adjustment there. As I said, I'm a professional electrical engineer. I was a certified energy auditor. I haven't really kept that up. But I'm a member of the Minnesota Renewable Energy Society. In fact, on the board there, we table and so forth for solar energy mostly, and have a tiny house that we drag around and demonstrate 4 different methods of using solar energy.
Thanks, Leslie, for the question. I'm from Evanston, which is where Barbara went to school at Northwestern University. It's the suburb just that borders Chicago to the north. I was just a kid there, so I didn't do any environmental work. But since college, I've done sort of like a variety of different things. Interned with the White House Council on Environmental Quality when I lived in DC for a little bit. Done a little bit of farming work. Interned with Max at the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization when he worked there. I helped start a nonprofit that used to do environmental education through canoe trips. So I was doing a lot of canoeing around Minnesota, and I paddled the full length of the Mississippi River, and kind of learned about the environment and was talking to folks about their relationship to the river through that experience. And I have a master's in public policy from the Humphrey School, where I've focused on energy and environmental policy, and then in my current role, focus on mostly energy issues and getting the carbon emissions out of our economy, and that work is focused mostly on the Minnesota state level.
Great, thank you. I see that we did have another question. Toya, did you have a question that you wanted to ask?
I feel like it was pretty much already answered, so yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then Indigo, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is kind of a question for both people too. But like, what would be your priorities for SEAC, or like, what are you looking forward to doing?
Well, the previous commissioners that left said you should choose one thing and, you know, really work on it because time goes by very fast and so forth. And I think that's probably a good suggestion. I would like to see us, however we do this, probably Kim, Aaron, and Kim can make suggestions, but write a report, write a letter, whatever we would do, on some particular issue which we could have something to say, and show that we've accomplished at least one thing, you know, at a time first, and we can work on other things as well, but concentrate on something that we can show as a product. I have owned and managed farmland since 1974, and rode a bicycle twice across the state of Iowa, so I can relate to some things that Anna's been saying.
That's awesome. That's a great question. I think there's a lot of different things. I think, Barbara, that was great advice from the previous commissioners, is focusing, because I feel like there's a huge swath of things that we could be doing and we could be focusing on, and kind of threads to pull. I'm interested in sort of like crowdsourcing among the committee, what everyone else is interested in. I'm interested in carbon emissions, and also like creating a more resilient and livable city. So for the city of Minneapolis and most cities, the vast majority of carbon emissions come from transportation and buildings. So there's a lot there, because there's huge overlaps both with health related to transportation and air pollution. So drawing down carbon emissions from transportation also has huge public health impacts and benefits. And then related to buildings, there's also a huge opportunity there to invest in energy efficiency, because it makes living in your homes much more affordable if you don't have to pay as much for utilities, and it makes for a more resilient city, because when we have these huge swings in temperatures, there's sort of less variability in the monthly costs. It also creates a lot of local jobs. So those are two things that are top of mind for me, but I'm also interested in hearing what else is top of mind for other folks.
Okay, thank you. And I'm not seeing any other hands raised, and so since we have taken about 5 minutes or so, let's move forward unless there's any objection to a vote, and we will do a verbal roll call. So I do have both of your phone numbers, so I will text you when take your phone, and I'll text you when we're done with the roll call vote. Thank you. Okay, so I know people aren't used to telling us who'd like to vote for, but we'll have to actually do this down a roll call with that. So thanks for your working with us on this. First, let me just ask, are there any other questions that folks have? Okay. So I'll read through the roll call and just let me know by telling me their first name and who you would like to see as the SEAC Vice Chair for 2021. So Max Dalton,
Anna.
Indigo,
Barbara.
Mark, Jen,
Anna.
Tess,
Anna.
Matthew,
Anna.
Sandy,
Anna.
Divine,
Barbara.
Leslie,
Oh, this is really hard. I'd say Anna.
okay. Toya,
Anna.
Nick,
Anna. Anna.
okay. Jacqueline,
Barbara.
and Aaron.
Abstain.
We have 8 votes for Anna and 3 votes for Barbara. So Anna is elected 2021 Vice Chair.
Cool beans.
Yes, I will send them their text messages.
I don't know when Bjorn sent me a text message that the voting was done, but I did not get the text message until Barbara was giving her talk about why people should vote for her. So text messages might take a little while to come through.
Oh, okay. So do you want to, I guess, you know what, all right, give me just a quick second. I'll pop it up here. Okay, so I have got that sent off to both of them.
Hi.
Hi. We're just gonna wait for Anna to come back. There she is.
All right.
Anna,
Anna's
are you
back
back
now.
on? Great.
back.
Hi. Well, thank both of you, Anna and Barbara. And actually, I really enjoyed hearing a little bit about your backgrounds and interests and things. So that's great. The vote was taken, and Anna was elected to be vice chair for 2021. So we will be scheduling our meetings for. We'll follow up with that. And actually, you know, one thing to keep in mind too. Assuming we can make a regular schedule for our agenda setting, that is an opportunity we can send out to everybody that is interested, could participate in that particular meeting as well too. So there's options to participate on that level as well too. So congratulations, Anna. Thank you, Barbara. And I will turn it over to our newly elected chair, Aaron. And thank also Liz Stout for sticking with us for the elections. So appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Liz, for going through that operation of business, I guess. So Liz works with Public Works, and because I have only just met her today in person, seeing her face, I'm going to let her introduce herself and dive into the topic.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me here tonight. I'm Liz Stout. I am an engineer with Minneapolis Public Works, and I am the city's water resources manager. Really, what my group does is manage our surface waters and making sure that we have clean water, swimming, fishing, recreating, and really managing the city's Clean Water Act permit. So that's really what my group is in charge of here with the city. So today I'm gonna, give me a quick second, I'm gonna share my screen here.
And for those who don't have access to the Teams web version, you can access Liz's PowerPoint online from the agenda at on the LIMS website. So if you go to lims.minneapolis.mn.gov/board/agenda/SEAC or board/SEAC, you should be able to get to the meeting minutes or meeting agenda and then the presentation from there.
Thank you, Erin. Well, today I'm here to talk about an update to the city's stormwater management ordinance. The stormwater management ordinance in the city is really the requirement that we put on developers to provide some type of water quality and water quantity control of their stormwater runoff as they go through the development process. We actually started this ordinance update in 2018, and we included interdepartmental partners internal to the city, including Kim Havey. We included technical partners, which are our local watershed management organizations, as well as some community partners. We had representatives from some local nonprofits, from the University of Minnesota, engineers, landscape architects, as well as people from the development community itself, who were kind of part of this overall effort to update the city's stormwater management ordinance. If there's any questions about that process, I'd be more than happy to answer it, but I really kind of wanted to dive into what we're going to be changing here, or we're proposing to change. Let's see. There we go. So right now, we do have a stormwater management ordinance in place. It has been in place for close to 20 years without being updated. So it's more than past time to update it. Currently, right now, if a development disturbs more than 1 acre of land, that is when this ordinance is triggered. An acre is approximately the size of a football field. So that tells you the size of development that would require this stormwater management. We're proposing to lower that threshold, to cut it in half, is go from 1 acre to half an acre. So now any project in the city that happens that disturbs more than half an acre will then trigger this new stormwater management requirement. So really, what does this mean? This chart here shows in the green are all of the projects that come through the city that require development review going through our community development department. And then those little bitty bars in blue are the ones that to date require stormwater management. So as you can see, a vast majority of the development that happens here in the city doesn't require any type of water quality treatment or stormwater management. What we're expecting to see is going from about 15% of projects will require stormwater management to a much higher percentage. So we're looking at probably almost three times as many projects will then require some type of a stormwater management facility be built with that development. So we're going to be capturing a lot more water, treating a lot more water, and preventing a lot more pollution from going into our local streams, the river, and lakes. So who will be impacted by this? It's all public projects, public and private, that disturb more than half an acre of land. So this means, housing development, high density residential, frankly, the Hiawatha campus, the Public Works campus, would also trigger this requirement. So that's who is going to be triggered by it or who's going to be impacted. What won't be impacted is sidewalk or underground utility projects. Mill and overlay, which is where we don't disturb the native soil underneath the street, or construction or reconstruction of a single family home. Those are explicitly exempted from this ordinance. One other thing that I wanted to point out is previously in the existing ordinance, city road reconstruction projects were exempted. They were explicitly said, you do not have to do stormwater management on road reconstruction projects. We have removed that exemption. So what that means is as Public Works goes in and does road reconstructions, we are holding ourselves to the same standard as we are developers. So we are going to be putting in a lot more water quality best practices, green infrastructure, and just stormwater management with our own city road projects. We are building in some capacity for what we call special conditions. In areas of the city, we all know they exist where there's existing flooding. We have the ability to go in and impose some additional standards when it comes to new development so that they aren't making existing problems worse. That's really the key here is we have an overburdened system that we don't want to add additional problems into existing neighborhoods. So we did build ourselves some language to really keep developers from making existing problems worse. We aren't doing a lot of change with what we call rate control. That is the speed at which water flows off of properties, but we are making people come into compliance with new updated rainfall events. That's one of the things we're seeing as a result of climate change is we are getting more frequent heavy storms. And so we're requiring developers take into account those changing precipitation patterns when they're designing any of their stormwater infrastructure. Again, this is to not add any changes to our existing system that would make existing problems worse. Really what this means, the rate at which stormwater leaves a property cannot be increased. This isn't a significant change from the existing ordinance, but it does take into account those climate change and new precipitation patterns. One of our new challenges is going to be what we call volume control. This is when you have to keep the water on your property. You infiltrate it into the ground. It creates groundwater recharge, and it doesn't allow any of the pollutants to then leave the property. Our previous requirement said, do what you can as far as infiltration and volume control, but we actually now have a standard. We say you have to do 1.1 inches of runoff off of your reconstructed impervious. So instead of telling developers that they do whatever feels, whatever you can, just do your best. Now we're actually giving them a standard to meet that they must meet as part of their development review. We're holding the city of Minneapolis to the same standard. As I mentioned, we had previously exempted road reconstruction projects. That is no longer the case. Anywhere where we are adding impervious surface, so we're maybe making a road wider or adding, taking away green space, we have to infiltrate 1.1 inches. And anywhere where we're just reconstructing existing impervious surface, we have to infiltrate 1/2 an inch. So again, we're holding ourselves to the same standard as we are developers. There are going to be some exemptions. We don't want to infiltrate water where there are vehicle fueling areas or where there's already existing contamination, either soil or groundwater. You don't want to pass more water through that and try and extend those contaminations. There are areas in the city where we just don't have soils that are conducive to doing infiltration. Either they're clay or they're what's called karst, which can cause sinkholes. And, we want to make sure that where we're doing these infiltration practices, that we have a suitable location to do it. And, infiltration is the cheapest and easiest way to do volume control. However, there are other options. There's what we call stormwater reuse. That means you can use it in an irrigation system, or it can be reused as gray water in toilets. So that's one other way to meet these volume control standards other than just infiltrating that water into the ground. We also have water quality standards. Those are not being changed as part of this ordinance update. However, we have recognized that the pollutants that we're allowing to flow off of the properties, whether that's phosphorus or total sediment, we do need to look at those and come up with some new standards. We didn't do it as part of this process, but it really did come to our attention that these need to be updated. So that's kind of the next step in our process, is really looking at the different pollutants that are impacting our water bodies and then updating some of these standards for developers and making sure that they're treating their water to a standard that is protective of all of our water bodies. So the previous water quality standards were actually set as part of a really significant public engagement process. If we were to do, when we do those updates, we will have another similar public engagement process. It looks at what we want to use all of our water bodies for. Do we want to have full contact recreation for them? Are they more for just fishing and kayaking? And that really makes those water quality standards important because all of the stormwater then runs into those lakes. So we really need to know what we want to use our lakes for, what the community wants to use their water resources for when we set those protective standards. Again, we do have a few exemptions, emergency work, small site projects, anything smaller than 1/2 an acre. I'm gonna skip through this to kind of the end here. So, what does this mean? We're having an effective date of January 1st. It's our proposal right now, of 2022. This really means that if a development has not been fully approved by the city council, that it needs to meet this standard. The same with public road projects. So if it is the public road project the design hasn't been approved by the city council, then as of January 1st, 2022, these new standards will apply to all of those projects. So as we're proposing right now, basically everything that goes into the ground starting next year will have to meet these revised standards. So our next steps, we do have a public hearing in front of the Transportation and Public Works Committee on March 3rd. That is, the public comment period is open then. We'll be receiving public comment either at the hearing or as part of the public record. It can be submitted to the city clerk's office. Right now, we're scheduled to go to the city council on March 12th with kind of mayoral action at the end of March is our proposed kind of timeline. And I apologize for bringing this to you so late. Our intent was to bring it to SEAC a little bit sooner, but there were some scheduling conflicts. But right now, I'm really hoping that what we're asking from you is some feedback. I would like to hear some feedback at this meeting on this approach or even our next steps towards implementation. If there's any desire from SEAC to participate in engage in the public hearing or to submit comments, we would absolutely welcome those comments. And then it comes down to implementation support. We are going to be, I think for me coming from Public Works, the biggest change is we're going to have to do this with all of our road projects. And so what that means is we're going to be looking for opportunities in different neighborhoods to do green infrastructure and to do stormwater management. And I think it comes down to public support for these stormwater management opportunities with those public projects. All right, I do see some hands raised. I will turn it over to the chair if you want to call on people. Thank you again, everyone, for your time.
Thanks, Liz. I am going to call on Barbara first.
Well, I wrote out my question in the chat. What is the estimate of how much pollution this would save over the present situation?
Well, over the present, what we usually look at is total phosphorus and total, what we call total suspended sediment, or basically soil washing off of the properties. We're going to be capturing just on the private end about 3 times as many projects. We've estimated if we looked at the last 5 years of projects, and we're going to be capturing 3 times as many projects, but only twice as much land area. So we're probably going to be seeing about twice as much phosphorus removal as we're getting now. When it comes to those public projects and what we're doing as far as road reconstruction projects, right now, I hate to admit it, we're not doing a lot. So that is almost probably going to be 100% improvement over what we're doing now. By capturing, I don't have the exact numbers as far as pounds of phosphorus, but that's kind of the estimated percentages.
Barbara, do you have a follow-up?
Well, does the phosphorus come from like fertilizer that's been put on lawns and that sort of thing, or where does it come from?
You know, phosphorus is, unfortunately, it's everywhere. It's in a lot of our, green plants, and it's bound to soil. For about the past 10 to 15 years, there actually has been a phosphorus fertilizer ban in the Twin Cities. So it's most places don't even sell phosphorus fertilizer right now. But that phosphorus is a nutrient, and it's bound to soil particles. It's within grass clippings, leaf litter, and there's been that's our best way to control it, is to put in those stormwater facilities to capture both soil as well as other organic material.
Nick?
Hi, I have a few questions, and they're all, I'll just give the top level. They're all related to getting rid of parking lots. So the first question I have is this potentially going to create a barrier to putting more useful things on parking lots? You mentioned that development projects are subject to it. The existing parking lot facility may not be subject to any controls. Obviously there's a lot of value that's converted by people who are building something on that. So this may not be incrementally much of a barrier, but just want to make sure that we're not going to ultimately create something that will perpetuate a problem. And then related to that, has there ever been any attempt to understand in terms of and this isn't maybe related to the stormwater ordinance that you've discussed, but more the stormwater fees that are assessed on all properties. Has there ever been any attempt to understand the secondary effects of parking lots and what that causes with roads? So basically, if you reduce parking lots, you reduce, theoretically, you reduce the demand for vehicle travel, which means then you reduce the amount of impervious space needed on roadways, and you create an effect of both reducing the direct runoff from that parking lot as well as the indirect runoff from roadway facilities. Has that been contemplated anywhere? Is that something that can be discussed as part of this? Maybe not for the current ordinance as part of the ordinance, but maybe in part of the enabling resolution to say that that's a next step that should be taken in the stormwater ordinance. And then the last question is back to my first one probably is for say multifamily that's being constructed on a multifamily or on an existing parking lot. How difficult is it for them to achieve that no increase provision if the current use is 100% impermeable surface? What are we really getting out of this? Those are my 3 questions.
Well, I wrote them down, so hopefully I can answer your questions, Nick. Really, the first one was on, if having these new regulations are going to be a barrier to change when it comes to conversion of parking lots. We did do some analysis, like a cost benefit analysis, and what this was going to cost property owners for kind of as a above and beyond, like above the development cost, what is the cost of stormwater management in that basically 1/2 acre to 1 acre threshold. And there will be an additional cost. However, what we were seeing, we actually looked at some real numbers from CPED, from community development, and we, based on the type of development that's going on, it's basically development's going up. And so the footprint and the actual cost of stormwater management was a very small cost compared to the overall, what we were seeing as overall development cost. Are there possibly some areas where this would be a barrier? I can't say that there might be, but in most cases, what we're seeing with development, the stormwater management piece is going to be a very, very small portion of whatever that development looks like. So if a property is basically slated to redevelop, or if a developer has targeted a parking lot as to redevelop, the stormwater management is not enough to keep that from being a viable, basically new use. So I think that was your first question. As far as the second question on the kind of secondary effects of really parking lots going away and potentially impacting vehicle travel and vehicle use, we did not really look at that. I guess I can't speak to that. That's more of I want to say a transportation question rather than a stormwater question. Any time that we can reduce impervious surface, however, we consider that a win. Anytime we can increase green space for multiple reasons, that's a win. If we can take away some parking and get more people biking, walking, taking public transportation, not just from a stormwater perspective, but from an overall environmental perspective, that's a win. So I guess I can't speak to the narrow window of stormwater management on that, but anytime we can get vehicles off the road, I think that's a win for the city and for the community. then I think your last question was basically on conversions of parking lots to multifamily. If we're going from 100% impervious to 100% impervious with the rate control. And you're absolutely correct. We aren't really getting any improvement when we go from a parking lot that's 100% impervious to a development that may have a little bit of green space. But what we're doing is we aren't making the existing problems worse. That's really our goal. We did look at some proposals for doing more for rate control, but it was decided to just keep things as they are, except in those areas where we know there are existing problems, where we have language where the city engineer can decide to make property owners do more as part of their development to help existing problems. I hope that answered your questions.
Leslie?
Yes. Thank you. I have a couple questions, Elizabeth. Thank you for your presentation. My first question is, because of the changes that you'll be planning to do with this proposal, is the city planning on hiring more inspectors? And what about the businesses that already exist that are responsible for monitoring their own stormwater management? Is there going to be changes and implementations to add the current people that's already having problems with their management? And another thing about that, what about implementing, I was thinking about green roofs to catch some of this, the storm waters that we have, because we've had an increase in water.
All right.
That's
Well,
it.
okay. Thank you, Leslie. As far as an increase in city staff and inspectors, we're hoping. You've kind of hit the nail on the head. We have actually right now about 700 properties that already have stormwater management facilities under the current ordinance, and now we want to put more in. And we are building in additional language into this ordinance to make enforcement action easier. These are required to be maintained by the private property owners, so that they continue to function and that they continue to provide this water quality benefit. But you're absolutely right. That requires that there be inspectors. It requires that we keep on top of those businesses and make sure that we're enforcing this ordinance. It's not enough to just put these practices into the ground. We have to make sure that they're maintained. We have to make sure that we're continuing to get that water quality benefit. And you talked about green roofs. Green roofs are another volume reduction tactic, where the water lands on the roof, it's uptaken by all that greenery, that vegetation. So that is absolutely an approved stormwater management practice that we would love to see on more buildings in the city, from a stormwater perspective, but also from an urban heat island perspective.
Thank you.
Just before we move on, in terms of the staff capacity, I was wondering too, in terms of having enough staff for the permitting side of things.
We currently do. We do have the capacity for that. We're looking at staffing right now, looking at previous numbers coming through the community development and how much time it takes. That's definitely a discussion that's in the works right now. We're also with requiring stormwater management on city projects. We're also looking at what that commitment is as far as whether it's city engineers or needing additional money on consultant contracts when doing the design work. That's kind of a big unanswered question right now. We are updating some of our process and procedures to make things flow a little bit better, to get some efficiencies that way. The actual enforcement of these private BMPs, my staff takes care of that. So we're doing a lot of just process improvement, trying to make sure that data is more available, making sure that we have a process in place that we can do things as efficiently as possible. I think that's our first step before we look at hiring additional staff.
Anna?
Thanks, Erin, and thank you, Liz, for the presentation. A couple of questions. So just to clarify, it sounds like the new ordinance applies only to like brand new projects that are sort of like breaking ground for the first time. And I'm curious about if it could be applied to like sort of like large renovations of an existing project, or if it's only sort of like a brand new building, and if that was considered at all, if there's a way to like apply it to an existing building. And then also sort of just if you have an idea, just for a little bit of context, I'm curious about if you have a sense of like of the cities across the United States and sort of the most ambitious stormwater policies. How does this one stack up?
Well, I'm going to actually answer your second question first. As part of this 2.5-year effort, we actually did some national benchmarking. We looked at 6 or 7 different communities across the country and looked at their stormwater policies, practices, ordinances. Every community is very different, so not all of them have the same type of ordinance, but we looked at communities such as Cleveland, Seattle, Fort Worth, Charlotte. I know I'm going to miss some because I don't have the list in front of me, but we did do some nationwide benchmarking looking at really our practices compared to nationwide. And we were pleasantly surprised that when it comes to like general policies, we were ahead of the pack. There are a few areas where we weren't. I'm going to say like some of our flood management. Hate saying that, but when it came to general stormwater management, water quality protection, things like that, just the state of Minnesota and Minneapolis, we were ahead of the pack. So that was something we did find in our benchmarking. Then your first question on existing buildings and redevelopment, we really only looked at when there's an exterior change, like they're actually disturbing ground. Mostly because these stormwater practices, there's something that requires earth moving to put into effect, whether that's a pond or a rain garden or something else. So I guess we didn't really look at those really retrofitted existing buildings unless there's some type of an earth moving something activity happening outside.
Mark?
Well, Liz, first of all, I'd like to thank you for bringing this in front of the commission for us to review. I appreciate that. So first of all, I wanted to echo Nick's comments on parking lots. I too would love to see parking lots eliminated. And I see a poster child example of that. Was a reconstructed parking lot just a couple years ago between the Federal Reserve Building and the Cedar Lake Trail. I bike the Cedar Lake Trail all the time, and I see that most days. And right now it's beautiful pavement, but there are almost no cars on it ever, and it's right next to the river. And to me, that just cries out for stormwater retention. And then the other question, the question I had for you, looking at the slide 7, special conditions, I see that the city engineer can impose conditions as deemed necessary to protect a storm sewer system or to prevent, looks like, safety concerns or public nuisances. But what I don't see is if it could pose increased or significant environmental risk. Again, if something stands out because of its proximity to a sensitive water body or others, are there ways to make sure we have the opportunity to apply additional controls based on environmental risk?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That isn't something that's really been applied in the past. I know that there are some facilities or properties, because of what they're doing on the property, whether it's an industrial facility or something like that, where we do have some additional, like you have to store your chemicals in a certain way because those are a higher risk, or you have to store things inside of the building so that when it rains, we don't get those pollutants, going into the storm sewer. We do that for some existing buildings. I know that we haven't really applied that same thing when it came to development. We do apply that lens when we look at doing independent, like city-led projects. We look at what the water body that those projects drain to. We look at if it's impaired for anything, if it's on the state's impaired waters list, or if there's a water quality study, called a TMDL. I'm going to nerd speak on you. That requires us to do pollutant removal, and we do base projects, like city-based projects off of that. But I don't know that we've imposed additional conditions on development. That's, I guess I don't have a firm answer for you, but that's not a bad idea. And frankly, the language that we left we put in the ordinance really gives the city engineer broad authority to do that in areas where we know there are existing problems. And it doesn't just say flooding problems, so we could interpret that to mean water quality problems.
Max?
Thanks, Liz, for this presentation. The question I have relates to volume control. And in your presentation, it talks about infiltration. Does this ordinance update, when it comes to an infiltration location, make any reference to what's expected at that site? Are we just saying go ahead and plant grass, or are we looking at a bigger picture, pollinator habitat, native species? And kind of related to that, has the city explored any additional changes to those soil amendments? Thinking specifically, we've got a curbside organics program. Are we bringing finished compost into the soil as we disturb these sites?
Well, thanks for your question. When it comes to the specific design of these stormwater management facilities, we do lean really heavily on the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency has their Minnesota Stormwater Manual, and that's really considered the gold standard on how to design these types of practices. But we absolutely, putting grass, just Kentucky bluegrass, in a volume retention practice and infiltration practice is just asking for it to fail. It's not going to thrive. It's, I as an engineer couldn't imagine approving a design that had that as the design. When it comes to, native plants, we do see a lot more success. They're a lot more drought tolerant. They're more winter tolerant. They have deeper root structures. We get a host of other benefits by encouraging native plants, and there are definitely benefits to pollinator habitat. That's something we do on our city projects, is we mandate putting in pollinator habitat around our own best practices, whether that's within rain gardens or around ponds. We don't specifically mandate pollinator plantings when it comes to rain gardens or infiltration best practices, but we do mandate using what we consider the appropriate plants, and grass certainly isn't the appropriate plant.
Kim? Kim, if you're there, your hand is raised.
Sorry about that. Liz, I'm wondering how the stormwater credit plays in regards to the sort of requirements, because I know that's still part of this as well too, and maybe just to give us a little explanation on if there's any significant changes there and kind of where it's landed.
Sure. We aren't taking the stormwater credits to the council at this time. We have some more things to do. So I'm going to back up. The city has a stormwater utility. And what that is it's the same as your water utility or your sewer utility. It is charged to every property in the city. It's based on the amount of impervious surface on the property and the size of the property. And that funding then goes to pay for really the upkeep of the storm sewer infrastructure, putting in new stormwater best practices, really the city maintenance of our storm sewer infrastructure. One of the programs that we have currently is a stormwater utility credit. Property owners who put in best practices, stormwater best practices, can then get a credit off of their stormwater utility because they're really treating that stormwater. So it doesn't have to then be treated by the city. So they actually pay less in that fee. One of the things we were looking at kind of in conjunction with this ordinance update is updating that whole stormwater utility credit. The way it exists now is if a development has to put in stormwater infrastructure, they can then get up to 50% off of their stormwater utility bill. So one of the big changes is we're really, if you're required to put in a BMP as part of development or a stormwater facility, you're no longer going to get then off of your utility bill if it's required. So we're allowing people to, if they're putting in voluntary practices, they'll get off of that credit, but we're only allowing a tiny amount now rather than up to 50% for required practices. We're still looking at different ways to, different things to do with that credit program. So for example, we've looked at, how can we build equity into this program? How can we reward voluntary putting in these BMPs, these stormwater management facilities, as opposed to them being required as part of development? How do we reward going above and beyond? So instead of just infiltrating the 1 inch, if you choose as a developer to infiltrate 2 inches, can we find a way to reward that? So those are the different things we're looking at as part of that credit program.
Sandy.
Hi, thanks. I'm curious about potential adverse impacts on environmental justice and lower income communities.
I'm trying to think of the best way to, we didn't look specifically when it came to development at environmental justice, like for example, the green zones and how that might impact development or redevelopment. We really took a broad look at across the city, what were the development statistics, how this would impact just on a wholesale level. What we do look at is for city projects, for example, when it comes to road reconstruction projects, we do have an equity metric that is part of the scoring. So it's not just a part of, a condition of the pavement, but we also look at areas where there have been, there haven't been historical investments in our facilities. And so because we're then doing those road projects, we are going to be seeing more storm sewer or stormwater water quality projects being put in the ground in those areas. Just outside of this ordinance itself, we have water quality projects that go in independent of road projects. So they're not mandated, but we do them as part of our mandate under the stormwater utility. Equity is also a metric in that. We really look at those ACP 50 areas, and that's part of the scoring. We look at, again, the receiving water, what the condition of that is. I'm trying to think, we look at the land use. So if something is industrial, there's going to be more pollutants. It makes more sense potentially to put stormwater practice to capture those pollutants before it gets to the river. But we also look at an equity metric that's part of kind of a scoring.
And sorry, the rate changes that you're proposing, would that have downstream impacts on lower income residents?
Well, the Stormwater Utility Credits program, we are trying to build in an equity component. So for example, one of the proposals, and these are, I'm going to be honest, aren't ready to go to the city council yet. So proposals is to, if somebody puts in a best practice within the green zones, which have been, identified as those kind of environmental injustice areas, that they can get, and they get the straight credit, whatever that happens to be, whether that's 50%, but then they get an additional credit on top of that. So, and then their maximum credit, we're proposing be 70%. If you're in a green zone, you can get up to 80%. So you have to do the practice, but then once you do, you get additional kind of money off of your utility bill. That's kind of one of our proposals right now.
But that would benefit the owners, not necessarily the tenants or the.
Right. It would, unless again if the renter or the leasee were paying the utility bill, then they would see the benefit of that rather than the owner.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I know that this is backing up to something that you said earlier, Liz, but what's ACP 50?
Oh, I apologize. It's areas of concentrated poverty. It's
Okay.
areas in the city, this is determined by a census tract, where there are basically BIPOC communities. It's a majority BIPOC communities, and it's Black, Indigenous, people of color, as well as they're below the federal poverty line. A majority, over 50%, are below the poverty line. So it's a kind of a measure of injustice.
Nick?
On the topic of the ACP 50s, I think it's just worth noting that there's a lot of debate about whether they should be used or not, and I believe the Metropolitan Council may be phasing them out, and basically to avoid calling out areas of racial disinvestment, because they're afraid that it actually causes people to continue to not invest. So just for people that ACP 50 is new to, there's a lot of unpacking there. If anybody's interested, I can actually link to the Met Council's blog post from last fall about it. I'll put it in the meeting chat.
Thanks, Nick. Not seeing any other hands raised, I want to say thank you for taking so much time with us, Liz. I know that this was longer than we'd originally planned, so I really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you all very much for your time and for your contributions. I really appreciate hearing all of the questions, and I have a few things that I need to think more about, so thank you all.
Is there anything that you need from us in a formal sort of capacity since we've had this long discussion?
I know that the time frame is short, especially because we are proposing to take this to a public hearing on March 3rd. I think one of the things, I'm trying to think of the best way not to throw Public Works under the bus. Sorry. One of the biggest issues we're having is making sure that we hold ourselves as the city to the same standard as we are developers, is, making sure that we no longer exempt ourselves. And I think if it's possible for SEAC to be in support of that, I think that would be really helpful, because that's a big change for our public works leadership. And that's a big commitment from the city to do those additional practices, and not just require developers to do them, but require the city to do them as well.
Mm-hmm.
So any support you can pull behind that one.
With the fact that the public hearing is on March 3rd, are comments allowed between then and when the council meets to talk about it? Or
yes.
Okay.
Yes, they will.
Okay. So we do have a little bit of time in that regard, just not by the 3rd, probably. Kim?
I was just going to say that we could, if folks wanted to at least pass a motion supporting that request to have the city included in on the standard and to meet the same standard as private development. At least then I could pass that along as a, that there was a motion that was made. Doesn't have to have a formal letter, and usually that takes 2 meetings, and so we may not hit it though. Potentially we could. I don't know what's the council date on that. March 3rd, is it like 2 weeks after? Because potentially we could bring something back, but we also could just pass a motion. I can bring that forward. It'll be part of the public comments, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Just another option.
If that's going to get things moving and quicker, I agree on motion that. I'm in favor.
Is there anybody who wants to second?
I would second, but just to clarify, this is just to hold the city to the same standards as
It's private developers. Yep.
I second.
Okay. In terms of for discussion, I see that you have your hand raised, Barbara.
Yes, I was going to say that even from a point of view of not wanting further regulations and whatever, I like this business of holding the city to the same standard, because if it's going to be prohibitive for private people, the city might find it prohibitive too, and get it changed again. Or if it's not, then that's fine. But yes, I think the city should be held to the same standard.
Nick?
So Aaron, I'm going to ask whether you're comfortable with us. Do we actually want to try a letter using the outline the objectives and the chair has the discretion to send the letter way that we did it at the end of the last session, with folks who want to help the chair writing with the authorship of the letter reaching out to you, or is that not achievable in the timeline that we're talking about?
I think if we can make a motion regarding this one specific thing, that would be helpful, but we can also keep in mind like doing a letter with even more comments if we think that's appropriate. But I think being able to get this one specific point out in front of council sooner would be helpful, in my opinion.
The one thing that I would add, or maybe the two things that I would add, just notes that I took from the conversation. So this is me making an amendment to the motion. So the motion was, as I understand it, sending a letter supporting inclusion of the City of Minneapolis Public Works Department in this, in the ordinance change. The two other things I heard was adding Mark's point, adding clarification either within the ordinance or within administrative direction that environmental quality can be a special condition, and that there should be more proactive guidance regarding natural species and pollinator friendly as appropriate plants, rather than leaving it more vague. I think that was Mark and Max. Did I capture your points adequately there?
Yes.
I'm seeing Max is nodding.
Yeah. So
Yes.
Mark has a thumbs
Yeah,
up.
I agree, Nick.
Yeah, just because those are related to the ordinance or the resolution that would adopt the ordinance, I feel like it would be valuable to get those in now.
So I would just to amend a little bit of what you're saying, Nick, what Kim was suggesting is that we could just pass something that is as simple as what you just said without having to do a full formal letter, and that Kim can pass that along to City Council for consideration sooner rather than later. So if you don't mind reading your amended piece one more time. After he's done with reading it, I'm going to ask if there's anybody who wants to pass that motion, and then ask if there's anybody who wants to second. So just so everyone's aware.
I'll type it in, but I will also say it. So I will amend the resolution to also include adding clarification that environmental quality can be a special condition, either in the ordinance or an administrative direction, and that more specific and proactive guidance should be given regarding natural species and pollinator-friendly species as appropriate plants when considering a mitigation strategy.
Along with the additional or the original point about the city being held to the same standard.
Yep.
Is there anyone who wants to move it and anybody who wants to second?
Aaron, I'll move that motion.
Okay, thanks, Max. Any seconds?
Yes, I'll second that. This is Mark.
Okay. Any further discussion? Not hearing any, I guess we can call for a roll.
Yes.
Roll call
That's
vote.
great. Just give me one more second.
Mm-hmm. I know I'm asking you to do like 5 things at once.
We can do it.
Kim, I'm typing out the resolution if that helps. It'll show up in the chat for you.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Yeah, that's great. I tried to get most of it, but yes, there's a lot there. So we'll just go through. Max, Dalton.
Aye.
Indigo.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
Tess.
Aye.
I know Matthew had to leave. Sandy.
Aye.
Divine.
Aye.
Leslie.
Aye.
Anna.
Aye.
Toya.
Aye.
Barbara.
Aye.
Nick.
Yes.
Jacqueline.
Aye.
And Aaron.
Aye.
That passes with 13 ayes and no nays. So that motion is accepted. So, yeah, so I can send that along to Elizabeth or upload that to the city council for comments to make sure that gets included in the record. And then if there is some more additional time, obviously there is an opportunity to provide more detailed comments either directly or bring them back up because, you know, as it said, they'll be putting this together for a while, and there's a lot on implementation as well that I think can be influenced if there are things you feel should be brought, you know, up in the actual ordinance. So, thank you.
Oh, sorry, Kim. So if we still have issues with what was presented, like I'm still thinking through the equity and EJ piece of it and don't feel comfortable with some of it. And so
yeah,
we haven't missed that opportunity to voice those kinds of concerns, right?
Right.
We have not missed that opportunity.
Okay.
Nick?
Yeah, I think given that the rates piece and the stormwater utility piece is still open, I think it would be great if SEAC could bring the appropriate folks back for a discussion about that, since ultimately that is a cost that all existing properties bear. It's very different from this conversation that affects new properties or new construction properties only.
Barbara?
If I have my hand raised, it's a mistake.
Okay, I will make sure to lower it. Okay. Anything else? So what I will do then, Sandy, is I will just start putting together a letter that we can approve at the March meeting. You should have all received an invitation with me to the Community Environmental Advisory Commission Google Drive. If you didn't, please feel free to reach out to me by email or text message, and I will try to work with you to make sure that you have access to it. As soon as I start that document, I will send a link around to us as a full group so that you can add in any other additional comments, work on some different language, and leading up to the March meeting, I'll ask for any particular comments or, track changes, just so that we can have a more quick discussion when March comes around. Does that sound good to folks? I'm seeing general head nods. Again, for the, 6 people I can see. So Nick or Kim, can you share whatever text you have? And I think, Nick, you were typing it into the chat.
I'm almost done.
Okay. So I think that's Tess. I'm still trying to get to know people's initials. It is coming. Okay.
I actually can read what I have right now. We can adjust it, I guess. So sending it, passing a motion to include, to recommend to the city council that the city be held to the same standard under the new stormwater ordinance, including clarification that environmental quality can be a special condition either in the ordinance or that this is where I get lost, can have more specific guidance, including things that support biodiversity and pollinator friendly friendly species. That's what it was. Okay, great. Nick, why don't you read yours? You have like the full detail there.
Yep. SEAC resolves that it supports the proposed ordinance change and specifically notes that inclusion of the city public works projects is an important recommendation. In addition, SEAC requests that environmental quality be considered as a special condition, either in the ordinance or in administrative direction. Finally, SEAC requests that more proactive guidance be included regarding native species and pollinator-friendly species as appropriate plans for mitigation measures. And hopefully, Kim and Aaron, you'll fix there's a few typos in there.
Yes, I will
no
get
problem.
that. That's perfect. Yeah.
And I would say too, Kim, if you could just pass along that we might have additional recommendations, but that we're still working on those, that would be great.
What
Barbara?
does environmental quality mean there? Does it have to do with how direct the outflow is it to one of our lakes, or what do you mean by that?
So I was using the terminology that Elizabeth used, I believe, basically that there's rate and volume issues, but then the stormwater quality is another consideration that isn't as explicitly included. So suspended sediment and phosphorus were the two that were mentioned. If that isn't exactly right, I think we probably have the flexibility to make minor wording changes still to get the exact interpretation correct.
So you're saying that the structure or whatever is proposed would depend on the cleanliness of the outflow that you'd expect? In certain places, it would require more, longer retention of the water because just of the nature of that particular land or itself, or how close it was to something else.
So this is the ones where there's an existing issue where the city engineer may specify something that is more stringent than the base ordinance.
Oh, that was kind of rock that was more permeable and so forth.
Yes. So this is kind of ad hoc, is my understanding, because every circumstance is going to require a specific engineering solution.
So it would only apply to certain narrow types of situations. Okay.
As deemed appropriate by the city engineer. Yeah.
Right.
I do recognize that we are already 4 minutes over time. We had a lot of discussion on this particular topic. Are there other particular things that anybody wanted to discuss as we work on wrapping up? Okay, so I will follow up by email just to also get a sense of some of the things that we might have on the March agenda, and then as well as this letter on the stormwater ordinance. Okay. All right. This is the one thing that we do not need to do a roll call for. I make a motion to adjourn. Anybody want a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Bye.
Awesome. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a
Bye.
good week.
You too, Leslie.